You remember early on in the pandemic, before people knew exactly how the virus was spread, so they just said, stay home, stay away from everybody, don't touch anything, don't breathe too much, don't breathe outside air. Thank God we figured out what exactly was going on so we didn't have to stay in our houses forever. Once upon a time, there was another disease that made people have random fevers on random days, and eventually, if they died, you would see brown spots on their organs. They had no idea how this disease was spread. They recognized certain people who lived around each other and were breathing the same air all got this disease, so they decided that the disease happened because of bad air, and they literally called the disease bad air, or malaria. This theory that the air is the reason that you have a disease was called miasma theory. But as people started exploring things, especially under microscope, they started to recognize plants and animals weren't the only things that existed in the world. This whole new world that they had previously not seen, they had to study. And the study of this small world that can only be seen under a microscope is called microbiology. One of the original applications of microbiology was trying to figure out exactly how malaria was caused. They were able to see a bunch of people's blood, and they looked under some blood and saw a parasite inside of red blood cells. And so they were like, okay, well, I guess this parasite is the thing that's causing this disease because I only see it in red blood cells where people have this disease. And then over time, they were also able to recognize the same parasite was inside of mosquitoes, specifically an Anopheles mosquito. Anopheles meaning good for nothing. So when they found the parasite inside of the mosquito, they came to the conclusion that the mosquito must be the thing that's spreading this parasite from person to person. This idea that there were tiny little things not able to be seen by the human eye, but that those little things were actually what was causing diseases in humans became known as germ theory. Before we discovered microbiology, people thought that the only things that existed were plants or animals. So everything in the world was separated into it being a plant or an animal or something that wasn't living, like a rock. However, microbiology opened up this whole new world where we now have to include something else in our classification. And we can't say, okay, this is just a plant or this is an animal. Now we're going to say, does this have a nucleus or does it not have a nucleus? The nucleus being the thing inside of a cell that holds DNA. But then they realized we actually can't say it only has a nucleus or doesn't have a nucleus. All of the things that don't have a nucleus, there's a lot of differences even between those. We got to take this up a level. Instead of there being two kingdoms, the prokaryotes and eukaryotes, there are now three domains: bacteria, archaea, and eukaryotes. Instead of there being prokaryotes, that has been separated into being archaea and bacteria. As with most things in science, everyone doesn't agree on how things should be classified. So after domains, it gets a little messy. Most taxonomy uses the same levels of classification, but exactly what species falls into which classification will change depending on who you're talking to. In order from biggest grouping to smallest grouping, we have domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and then species. And then even within species, there's like subspecies, like subgenus, subfamily. So the way any scientist classifies an organism might be different depending on what characteristics they're using to call something a family versus a genus, etc. In summary, microbiology came about because we were all of a sudden able to see things that were smaller than we could see with our naked eye once a microscope was invented. Miasma theory of disease is the idea that air is the thing that actually causes people to have disease. Germ theory of disease is the idea that there are actual organisms, living or dead, that produce the ability for another organism to have a disease. The way that each organism is classified is called taxonomy, and taxonomy is broken down into different divisions: domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. There are not just eukaryotes and prokaryotes anymore. The prokaryotes are now referred to as archaea or bacteria, depending on how their cells function. The differences between archaea and bacteria will be discussed in upcoming videos.